Hello? Check.
And can we check this one? Good morning. It's a lovely morning at Rainbow Mennonite. So,
Thank you, Karen. Good morning, and welcome to Rainbow Mennonite Church. We welcome those of you who have joined here, those who have joined us via live stream, and those who are perhaps joining later in watching our recording. As we enter the Thanksgiving week, this week our DEI committee at work, which I oversee, had a koala tea time. We call it tea time. And it was a time to reflect on community. And as we think about Thanksgiving and look at the history of Thanksgiving, the first Thanksgiving is often portrayed as a friendly harvest celebration. And so not entirely in that story. There is more complexity in that. As we think about our own land acknowledgement that we have, the voice that I want to share is of the Wampanoag voice, and a perspective that has been largely absent. They were European explorers and traders for nearly 100 years before English settlers arrived in 1620. And so they were first among to have interaction and share their abundance of crops that they had and shared that first meal. Harvest ceremonies and festivals have been an integral part of their lifeways for thousands of years. And they practice daily and seasonal traditions of giving thanks long before the encounter with English settlers and the formation of Thanksgiving as a national holiday. They reside mostly in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, and Wampanoag means people of the first light. I'd also like to share and reflect that Thanksgiving greeting from Adenosawants, people of the long who were from southern New England, New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Canada. Today we have gathered and we see that the cycles of life continue. We have a duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. We bring our minds together as one as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. Now our minds are one. The Earth Mother. We are thankful to our mother, the Earth, for she gives us all that we need for life. She supports our feet as we walk about among her. It gives us joy that she continues to care for us as she has from the beginning of time. To our mother, we send greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one. The food plants. With one mind, we turn to honor and thank all of the food plants we harvest from the garden. Since the beginning of time, the grains, the vegetables, beans, and berries have helped the people survive. Many other living things draw strength from them too. We gather all the plant foods together as one and send them a greeting of thanks. Now our minds are one. The trees. Turn our thoughts to the trees. The earth has many families of trees who have their own instructions and uses. They provide us with shelter and shade, others with fruit, beauty, and other useful things. Many people of the world use a tree as a symbol of peace and strength. With one mind, we greet and thank the tree. Now our minds are one. And I'll end with the Creator. Now we turn our thoughts to the Creator, or Great Spirit, and send greetings and thanks for all creation. Everything we need to live, life is here on this Mother Earth. For all that we love that is still around us, we gather our minds together as one and send our choicest words of greetings and thanks to the Creator. Now our minds are one. Soon after the choir will share John Rutter's For the Beauty of the Earth, and I shared with Rosie one of my favorites. He composed it in 1978, and it was published in 1980, based on a hymn by Follett Sanford Pierpoint in 1864, who indicated that he was feeling blessed when he looked outside at the countryside near Bath, England, reflecting on the beauty of the earth. John later changed the refrain to God of all, which means of thanks and praise for the creation. Please join me, stand and turn to hymn 114, noting we'll sing the alternative verse 3. Nun danket alle Gott. My German's a little rusty. I have sung this in German. Now thank all our God. Thank you.
are we on? I invite the children to come down. We have one more day of gathering that we need help with. Oh, look at all the helpers that are coming. I hope if you brought peanut butter or the Bisquick or other things like that, you have them out and ready because we've got some great helpers coming this way. Good morning, everybody. Wonderful. So this is the last Sunday that we're gathering up peanut butter and Bisquick and things for the Crosslines Christmas store. Send you out. I'm giving one more plug to the people out here. Okay. Just a reminder, we need to raise around $12,000 to pay for the rest of the food that we need for the Crosslines Christmas store. So if you haven't made a donation, it's earmarked. Please consider doing that. The other thing, there's been a link in the midweek notables about volunteering at the Christmas store. I did not get a chance this morning to look and see what openings are, but if you're thinking about volunteering, click through that link. If there are still openings and you have the time, please stick your name in there so that we have lots of good helpers who get to wear these wonderful aprons. You know, that's an added bonus this year. You get to wear an apron like this if you volunteer. So, so that's the message for the adults, okay? So, you guys have been such great helpers for 2 weeks already. I am just so impressed. It looks like we have so many helpers, we have enough baskets for everybody to have one. So think finding a friend and sharing, holding that basket as you go out and gather things up. Okay, so whoever you can tap on as a friend, think about grabbing somebody that you can help gather things up. All right, are we ready, everybody? Okay, so grab a basket, see if you can find somebody to help you, please, because we only have a number of baskets, okay? So you're going to have, you can have that one. You can have, Go ahead. Go ahead. Okay. Over. Okay.
Help me?
Yeah, okay. And then if you have a basket, look for people holding things up. You can go get them just with your hands too, okay? But if you're little, these get really heavy, so you might want a friend to help you. Oh, okay. Here's a basket yet, if somebody wants a basket to use. And thank you to everybody who's been making donations.
Favorite anthems. I love that. Familiar words, but new music. And just a lovely sentiment, I believe. But it's new every time we do it, I think. This is the point in the service where we excuse the kids to go to the Rainbow Room with Sarah. They are preparing for a script for a Christmas program, and I've seen the beginnings of it, and it is going to be a new take on the Christmas story that I think we're all going to really appreciate. So now, after 2 months, a little more than 2 months actually, of study of the Sermon on the Mount, we have come to the last 2 verses. Matthew 7, verses 28 and 29. And those 2 verses are, "When Jesus finished these words, the crowds were amazed at his teaching because he was teaching them like someone with authority and not like their legal experts." I'm going to read that again. 2 verses. "When Jesus finished these words, the crowds were amazed at his teaching because he was teaching them like someone with authority and not like their legal experts." So is that how we're feeling about it today, the Sermon on the Mount? Amazed at this teaching? I have to say that I have been amazed at the new insights that I've heard this time around. And it feels like every time we reach the end of the Sermon on the Mount, what we should do is just turn around and start again, and because the insights just seem to grow every time. I would like to review just a little bit to remind us of the journey that we've taken with our climbers here that our visual folks have supplied, that we've seen on the Sermon on the Mount. Yeah, so first we have the climbers at the base. They're just starting to climb the mountain, and I think Jesus is hoping that the disciples will follow. And at the beginning, pondering the categories of blessedness, the Beatitudes. And then they started climbing, the next one, with a hunger and thirst for righteousness. Pursuing righteousness, we talked about what that means and finding it by serving others and guidelines for living together. And then we found resting, speaking the truth with a release from anxiety. And then we talked about hiding and humility and anonymous generosity. And then we kept climbing, and we were taught how to pray with the Lord's Prayer. And then in the next one, we found a climbing friend. We talked about community and how to ask for what we need and how to accept it, to receive, and also how to reserve judgment. And then climbing higher, hang on. But it's good to have a strong foundation if you're going to climb high. And now, just a little preview of what's ahead. Going on from the Sermon on the Mount, at the beginning of chapter 8, what does Jesus do? Jesus comes down from the mountain. And then what happens? Well, near the end of the Sermon on the Mount, in verse 26, Jesus says, "Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand." And that word practice jumped out at me. And not just because that's what I've spent lots of hours of my life doing as a musician, as practicing, because it's what Jesus does after he finishes the Sermon on the Mount. He comes down from the mountain, and the rest of the book of Matthew describes how Jesus practices what he's just preached, and he becomes the example. One of the writers that Ruth has mentioned often in this study of the Sermon on the Mount is an author named Rich Villodas, and his book, The Narrow Path, How the Subversive Way of Jesus Satisfies Our Souls. And I'm going to share Villodas' summary of the Sermon on the Mount, because I think it's wonderfully succinct and well thought out. And I quote, "Jesus makes a bold statement. Those who practice his teachings live on a strong foundation. On the other hand, those who hear his words but do not practice them are overtaken by the storms of life." When Jesus makes this promise, he's not saying that people who practice his teachings will not experience problems. In plenty of other places in the Bible, he reminds us that following him endangers our comfort and sometimes even our lives. Nonetheless, he promises a level of interior and community stability that makes our lives indestructible. So Jesus ends his masterful manifesto with a great promise. If you choose the narrow road, your life is secure. It's the end of the quote from Rich Villodas. Well, this has been one time through the Sermon on the Mount, and I think we could go through it again and again and keep learning. Speaking of which, there has been a Bible study group meeting on Monday evenings at 5 o'clock by Zoom. And you know that anyone can join that group at any time, right? Everyone is welcome to that group. And they have been studying this same scripture, the Sermon on the Mount, every week, taking it verse by verse. And we have asked a couple of members of the Bible study group to share a reflection on that time together and what this study has instigated for them. So we've asked Daryl Wientz and Nancy Boucher to share. So I'll ask Daryl to come forward now and share his reflection.
Yes, I've been in that group, and it's something I look forward to each week. It's been a good time. Jesus was a student of the Scriptures. Are you a student of the Scriptures? Most of us would say maybe yes, or maybe not. Jesus was, and he knew them. He knew them already from an early age. We have this story in Luke where he was taken by his parents to Jerusalem. And he stayed behind in the temple to study and perhaps debate with the teachers who were there. So he was a student of the Scriptures. It's one of the things we recognize and admire about him. Now, following the Sermon on the Mount, which is given in those 3 chapters, 5, 6, and 7, the last verse, as Rosie just mentioned, tells us that the disciples and the people in the crowds were amazed. Why amazed? It says that because he taught with authority. When Jesus quotes the Scriptures or refers to them, he usually begins it in the Sermon on the Mount with, "You have heard it was said by the people of old." And he probably means the way people learned the Scriptures was they were told the Scriptures in the shops, in the marketplace, at the well, in the fields. These were the common people who followed him. And when he says those words, then he follows it with, "You shall not murder." That's a quotation from the Scriptures. It's from the Torah. It's one of the 10 Commandments. You can find it in Exodus 20. "You shall not commit adultery," also in Exodus 20, and it's also in Deuteronomy. "You shall not swear falsely." That's one of the 10 Commandments. "Return an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, a hand for a hand, a foot for a foot, a burn for a burn, a stripe for a stripe." It's in the scriptures. And he refers to that. That's found in Leviticus, Deuteronomy, and Exodus. In each of these quotations, Jesus next follows with, "But I say to you." So, is he making contradictions? Well, the answer he gives is no. At the beginning of this, he says, do not, would be verses 17 through 20 in chapter 5. He says, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets, but to fulfill them. Not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished." Everything accomplished. He sounds to me a little bit like a coach. "But I say to you, I want more." You're going to give 110%. And not only does he make the claim that these are his fulfillments of the law and the prophets, to most of us, if we admit it, they are radical. And by that I mean Jesus is contending that to be in God's kingdom, we must go further, that we should go to the heart of human behavior, to the root of the issue at hand. Radical. What does radical mean? Well, I looked it up in my trusty thesaurus in my word processor. It means fundamental, sweeping, far-reaching, drastic, major, basic, profound. And depending on how you use the word radical, it may be extremist, revolutionary, militant, radical. So is what he said radical? He said to love your enemy. When you have an enemy, leave a gift. Quell your anger. Settle matters quickly. I think that's pretty radical. Can you do it? It's not easy. It says to not even look at another lustfully when you want divorce. To not swear at all. Let your truth be a simple yes or no. Turn the other cheek. To give your coat if someone sues you for your shirt. To go the second mile. To give to the needy when they ask. To pray and fast humbly, not like the hypocrites in public. To not worry about your daily needs. Can you do that? I think that's pretty radical. To not judge others. To ask, seek, and knock. Yes, this is all pretty radical behavior. Again, the last verses say the people were amazed. I think I would have been amazed had I been there. I would have actually wondered, I think, we take this seriously? But then the last two verses also say, amazed because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teachers of the law. Now, Matthew may have written his gospel based on things he had learned about Jesus as one of the 12 disciples. He may have been Matthew the tax collector who left his work and decided to follow Jesus. But according to what I've read, that's not certain. We don't know. One thing we do know is that he had the Gospels of Mark and Luke before him when he wrote his gospel. Those two were written earlier. Mark the earliest, probably in the early 50s AD, and Matthew probably wrote in the late 50s. He had them. And a mathematical analysis shows that about 91% of what is in Mark is in Matthew. It's contained in Matthew. There was also another source, maybe more mysterious. A gospel source which stands for quell in German. And we don't know much about it, but it seems that there was this other source. He laid out his gospel, given what information he had, and maybe he was there. He may have heard the Sermon on the Mount himself. At the end of his account, then, he wrote that Jesus taught as one authority. What do he really mean by that? Well, first of all, I think we can, as Christians, that Jesus' teaching carried authority because he was the Son of God. The Spirit of God was in him, and that must have come across when he spoke. But interestingly, when we read on in Matthew into chapters 8, 9, and 10, what is that Jesus next went into action. When the Sermon on the Mount ends at the conclusion of 7, Matthew goes on to describe his interactions with the people. He healed a man with leprosy. Then he healed the centurion. Then many more. He calmed the storm on the Sea of Galilee. He restored 2 demon-possessed men. He gave and healed a paralytic man. He raised a girl from the dead. All of this greatly verifies his authority. And so, to me, what Matthew has laid out before us is that Jesus first blesses, that's in the Beatitudes, then he details his plan for the kingdom behavior for his followers. And then Matthew shows us that Jesus acted. So for me, the message Matthew is conveying is that as a follower, I should know what is right, then I must try to act upon what is right. Faith works.
Thank you, Daryl. We've asked Shay to share her reflection from the Bible study. Nancy has out and asked me to read it to you because has a tremor in her voice, which makes it difficult in speech for a long time. So thank you, Nancy, for allowing me to share with you. And I will read it in first person the way she has written it. My name is Nancy Bush. I have been part of our Monday evening Bible studies on Zoom for several years now. I feel a need to share something about my relationship to the Bible before I began to attend the Rainbow Bible Study group. In all honesty, this was my first extended encounter with actually going through passages verse by verse and discussing our reactions and knowledge as a group. To begin, let me recall a few memories I have from childhood encounters with the Bible. My mother had a Bible with many pictures, beautiful paintings, which I loved looking at. I received my first Bible at age 7. It was a small black leather King James with a zipper, a red letter edition, which highlighted the words spoken by Jesus. It didn't have quite as many illustrations and maps as my mom's larger Bible, but I was to call it my own. We were taught holy and to handle our Bibles with great care and reverence. At one church talent show, a young girl sang the old children's song, "The Bible, that's the book for me." And she had her Bible in her hand, and she bent down and placed it on the floor and stood on it while she continued singing, "I stand alone on the Word of God, the Bible." My grandmother was horrified. I went to Sunday school and worship services at a small rural church throughout my childhood and youth, usually 3 times a week. We had Sunday morning and Sunday evening services, and on Wednesday evenings, a combination prayer meeting and Bible lesson led by our pastor. Our Sunday school classes were small, but we always had teachers who followed the quarterly materials faithfully. definitely exposed to many Bible stories. In the summer, my siblings and I would often go to a vacation Bible school at larger area churches, and the songs especially made big impressions on me. The text helped me learn even more Bible verses and stories. Some of our pastors were better at holding my interest than others, but I especially remember the pastor who had a catechism class with me before I was baptized. I memorized the books of the Bible, categories or types of books, and had a good introduction to what was included in the Bible. My college education was in liberal arts with a music education major. I had one New Testament class and learned lots of sacred choral and organ music in choir and in private lessons. The Bible was still seeping into my system, so to speak, even though I didn't have real Bible study opportunities. I hardly ever forget the text of hymns or choral anthems. Back through the years, I realize I have been somewhat reluctant or even resistant to join some of the Bible study groups available to me. All my life, I've attended church regularly, but I was also involved with leading children's music during Sunday school. When I did have opportunities to attend adult Sunday school classes, I was hesitant to jump into discussions because I often was comfortable with the interpretations and assumptions of teachers. They were usually using published Sunday curriculum and were more apt to lead in a lecture style, exploratory style with open discussion. My experiences with adult education classes at this church for the last 10 years have been so very positive. What a breath of fresh air. Thank you, Rainbow. So this is my most prolonged stint with a Bible study group. Our most recent topic has been Jesus' Sermon on the Mount in the book of Matthew. My little red letter edition Bible had several pages of red for this part of the scripture. Throughout our study, I've been moved by the realization that these words were coming from the mouth, the heart, the intellect of our great teacher, Jesus. I am filled with a new appreciation and awe for what he laid out as the way of his followers, later to be called Christians, that what they would need to proceed to live this. Sometimes I have imagined myself in the crowd surrounding him as he spoke, trying to take it all to heart. We don't really know if he spoke all of these verses at one time or if they were compiled from several occasions. Society to say that there are many sermons in what we now call the Sermon on the Mount. Studying these chapters brings back memories of times I heard these words in stories and in music. Some of the Beatitudes I learned by listening to children's record my parents bought us about Johnny Appleseed. In this story, at the end of Johnny's life, a voice seemingly from heaven sang several of the Beatitudes. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they are called children of God. Of course, the angelic chorus making beautiful music in the background helped imprint this on my mind. I can hear it now. And then there are the songs. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel, no. And the Lord's Prayer, an oldie but goodie. Angry words, oh, let them never from the tongue unbridled slip. And what about the yellow wooden yardstick that had the golden rule printed on it? That couldn't have possibly been the one my mom used to chase me into the house when I didn't come in when she called, right? But all is not light and blessings in the Many of us have squirmed in our pews when the preacher seems to be speaking directly to us personally during sermons from these chapters. I struggle with some of these teachings of Jesus, and I'm pretty sure most of us would say the same. Subjects such as divorce, wealth, anger, retaliation, and that really tough one about enemies, those are hard ones, aren't they? The greatest of teachers challenge us, and that is certainly what our teacher Jesus is doing in his Sermon on the Mount. Our study has given me so much to ponder, and I have treasured our time together. I no longer feel reluctant or resistance to Bible study. No, quite the opposite. I am becoming more and more inspired to keep at it. There's just so much to learn. I will close with my favorite passages from our study, Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy, but I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the righteous and on the unrighteous. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Thank you, Nancy, for those wonderful words. And now, as a final acknowledgement of our journey on the Sermon on the Mount, let's sing Guide My Feet, and pray that these words will guide and guide our feet. From a pitch.
Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. Guide my feet while I run this race. For I don't want to run this race in vain.
Thank you. And now is a time in our service when we, our community, this is a time when we share joys and concerns. If there are guests, if you have guests with you, if you would like to introduce them, this is an opportunity for that. If you're here on your own and brave and can share your name, we always appreciate that. Guest registers or registers on the ends of the pews, if you would please take those and sign. Pass them along and then pass them back. That way we get to know who's in the pew with us. So first of all, are there introductions or guests you would like to welcome this morning? Or joys to share as well. And do we have a microphone? You wanted the microphone? Oh, okay. Are there joys to share? I have a joy to share. There is a slide from last Sunday. The East Hill Singers were here, and we had a full house. And we acknowledged that there are 3 East Hill Singers who have been with the group from the beginning, members of our congregation, Dwayne Graber, Cliff Hostetler, and Wendell Seltzer. And they were recognized. It was a wonderful afternoon, and many hands chipped in to make it happen. We served a snack and a meal for all the singers afterwards, and they ate their families. And I think there were a number of stories that were really touching. One young adult gentleman came. He had not seen his father for 6 years. And there was a story about a guitar. You'll have to ask Cliff or Dwayne about the story with the guitar, but there's some really touching moments. So thank you to everyone who helped make that happen. To share? How about concerns, things that you... Yeah.
I'm going to sneak it first. In the midweek email, there's a link to a Mennonite Disaster Service YouTube video concerning Asheville, North Carolina. My brother and sister-in-law are just finishing up their time there, assessing what needs there are and where MDS can be helpful. They noted that there are 2,400 bridges that no longer exist, and that there was 30 inches of rain in 6 hours through those hills. So just keep Asheville in prayers, and let's figure out how we can be part of helping them.
Jan and I were at a musical at Shawnee Mission West this week on Friday night, and on the way home, we were stopped at a truck, and his dog walked in front of us and got hit by a car coming the other direction. So we had to stop and help him out, call the ambulance and whatnot. Just prayers to be with him and his dog, because they didn't look like they were doing too well. So.
Oh.
So I may be a bit out of order here. This is an announcement, and it kind of relates to what we just heard about MDS in North Carolina. So I wanted to do that now. For years, Mennonite Disaster Service provided support for disasters who do not otherwise have the means to provide rebuilding and recovery. Our community is planning a trip to North Carolina in the spring of 2005. And we have 5 or 6 people here that are interested in participating. They've expressed that interest, and we have told MDS that we'll be able to support that effort with individuals. So we have room for more volunteers if anyone would like to participate. And the requirements for participation are minimal. All that's required is a hopeful heart and a willing hand. So details on location and schedule will be provided as they become available.
Hi, this is Rebecca Davido. I have 2 things. One, this last week, there were layoffs in our company, and my team directly was affected by 2 people who I care very much about. It's a hard time to be let go of a job, especially with holidays coming and with new people coming to the office. It's all very stressful. So just pray for those people who have lost jobs recently. And the second thing is I want prayers, but I'm also very excited about, I think you know, it's coming. November 4th, I finally get my shoulder surgery. I've gone through all the things, all the boxes have been checked, so it's going to happen. I'm very excited, but still I would like your prayers for that. I don't know if we're going to be back next week because we're traveling time, so that's why I'm announcing it now, but thank you in advance.
Hi, everyone. This is my grandma. Her name is Janice, and she's from North Newton. She lives there.
Welcome. Cece can teach us all how to use the microphone. She does a good job. We have over here.
Fran Otto. I wanted to thank everyone for their cards and prayers, and I wanted to passed on November 4th, and the funeral was November 15th. So I wanted to share with you all what I read at the cemetery. It was a pretty service for her homegoing, but Mom demonstrated to us how to work, how to serve others, how to love and forgive. For me, watching her grow in her own spiritual journey was encouraging and powerful. Her last words to us as her children was to forgive everyone and each other and to try to get along. For me, this means loving everyone for the sake of God. If we are to be able to be part of making our world a better place, we must each individually strive for kindness, peace, love, and unity as Jesus demonstrated for us, and offer guidance for each of us in our spiritual journeys. And I'd like to say this prayer for other as well and share this with you. O thou kind Lord, this dearly cherished maidservant was attracted to thee, and through reflection and discernment longed to attain thy presence and enter thy realms. With tearful eyes she fixed her gaze on the kingdom of mysteries. Many a night she spent in deep communion with thee, and many a day she lived in intimate remembrance of thee. At every morn she was mindful of thee, and at every eve she centered her thoughts upon thee. Like unto a singing nightingale she chanted thy sacred verses, and like unto a mirror she sought to reflect thy light. O thou forgiver of sins, open thou the way for this awakened soul to enter thy kingdom, and enable this bird trained by thy hand to soar in the eternal rose garden. She is afire with longing to draw nigh unto thee. Enable her to attain thy presence. She is distraught, stressed in separation from thee. Cause her to be admitted into thy heavenly mansion. O Lord, we are sinners, but thou art the forgiver. We are submerged in the ocean of shortcomings, but thou art the pardoner, the kind. Forgive our sins and bless us with thine abundant grace. Grant us the privilege of beholding thy countenance, and give us the chalice of joy and bliss. We are captives of our own transgressions, and thou art the King of bountiful favors. We are drowned in a sea of iniquities, and thou art the Lord of infinite mercy. Thou art the giver, the glorious, the eternal, the bounteous, and thou art the all-gracious, the all-merciful, the omnipotent, he who gives and the forgiver of sins. Verily, thou art he to whom we for the remission of our failings, he who is the Lord of lords.
Thank you. I think that we will make that our prayer for the morning. I think we will make that our prayer for the morning. Let's number 541 as a response to that. One time. I invite the ushers to come forward. We are grateful for these gifts that have been brought this morning. I have one announcement. As part of this year's Christmas program, the children and youth will be collecting items to make infant care kits for MCC, Mennonite Committee. There is a list of items that are needed to be collected or made on the table in the Wesley room. If you want to donate items, you can. It's okay to purchase only some of the items. You don't have to purchase the whole list. Monetary donations can also be made, and other folks will complete the kits as needed. The last date to donate items is December 15th before church, because this will be part of the program. And purchased items can be left in the fellowship hall. There's a box there for that. I encourage you to read the other announcements that are in the news notes. And at this time, let's stand as you are able and turn to hymn number 745. And now, as we go into this Thanksgiving week, open wide our hands in sharing as we heed Christ's aegis call, healing, teaching, and claiming, serving you by loving all. Amen.